Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new build in my series, Building Nancy Drew in The Sims 4. Today, we have the first part in yet another big build in the Nancy Drew universe, and this time we are doing the Golden Gardenia. In fact, it ended up being so big that I had to go from a lot that I was trying to use and end up going to this giant 64 by 64 lot. I do end up using most of the square footage on this lot too, so this is a massive build. It's kind of funny because when I play in the Golden Gardenia in Message in a Haunted Mansion, it doesn't seem like that massive of a building. It almost has this cozy feel to it, but when you actually look at the square footage and when you look at the outside picture of what the Golden Gardenia is supposed to look like, it's a massive building. It's actually really huge. So this build took me a very long time. It was a really extensive build, and because it's so big, I did have to split this build video up into 3 separate parts, just like I had to do with Ramsey Hall. My computer and my editing software can only handle videos that are so big, and I can only handle talking constantly for so long before my poor throat runs out of energy. So here we are with the first part of our Golden Gardenia build. This part will include me figuring out basically the entirety of the floor plan, and also the bedroom that Nancy stays in, the bedroom that's themed with kind of a Chinese style furnishing style, as well as the upper hallways. So when I was working on this build, I've been doing this kind of thing as I'm working on these recreations where I kind of put some of the furniture on the inside at the same time as I'm doing the exterior. And I'm doing this to get a good idea and sense of the scale of the build so that I make sure I can include everything that needs to be included, especially with this main hallway here because it's a huge giant space in the game. It's 2 stories, it's open completely to the top. It has these really big fancy staircases, so I wanted to make sure that I was able to get everything in. And that's really what the majority of this first part is me kind of putting down furniture as we see it in the game. I used a screenshot from the walkthroughs that I did for this game for literally every location in this build to try and get it as close to picture perfect as I possibly could. This is another game that's very close to my heart, so I wanted to make sure that I did the Golden Gardenia justice. I obviously want to do all of the games justice, but there are some that are just like especially important to me, and the Golden Gardenia is definitely one of those. I think Message in a Haunted Mansion was probably the 3rd game that I played, so it was pretty early on in the series, and I just remember playing it for the first time as a pretty young kid. I think I was probably like 12 or 13 or something like that, and just being terrified and loving this game and the subtle scare factor. Obviously the characters look like clay people, they look a little bit silly, but even the stories that we have with them and like the love story that we have with El Diablo, it's just such a fun mystery. And so when I was working on this recreation, I wanted to try and get it as perfect as I possibly could. And again, I do that no matter what, but there are some that you just hold very dear and near to your heart, and this is definitely one of those. The outside image that we get of this build is a kind of a 2-dimensional drawn image of the outside of a Victorian manor. So I was using that, and honestly, the outside of this build is actually pretty similar to what the interior floor plan is actually like. That is not always the case in the games. It's actually kind of common for the outside of the build to not represent what the inside floor plan looks like at all. But in this one, they're surprisingly close. So that was kind of a nice change of pace for me. Made things a little bit easier. But again, this is a massive build, so it was very tricky trying to get the square footage to line up perfectly. This interior living room space ends up being huge. It's definitely bigger than it is in the games, but if I'm working off of the window spaces that we see and the outside that we see, it ends up actually working out, but the living room ends up being just massive. There's a lot of seating in there, so it would be very comfortable because you'd have a lot of choices for couch space. I think that furnishing will be in part 2, if I can remember correctly. Right now I'm working on doing kind of the wraparound porch that's super common in Victorian styles. This is a very Victorian house, and in Message in a Haunted Mansion, the manor itself is being renovated. So the outside images that we see of the house actually have like boards on the windows, and when you go inside for the game, there are ladders everywhere, some of the wallpapers being replaced, some of like the stairs are being fixed up. So there are some rooms that are finished, and then there are a lot of rooms that are not quite finished, and especially like the hallways and stuff like that. The way I did it in The Sims 4 in this build was to pretend that Rose and Abby, the owners of the bed and breakfast of the Golden Gardenia, have finished their renovations and that the build is now complete. So every room is fully renovated, every room is at its peak, beautiful Victorian aesthetic, and I had a lot of fun with that. There's really not too many spaces that I had to take things out, but you won't see ladders around, you won't see cardboard boxes or paint rollers or paint chips or anything like that. It's a completely finished build. So here I'm trying to figure out the square footage of the library. The library ended up being one of the easier rooms for sure. These bookcases that we got from Discover University, I have used now in so many builds, especially these Nancy Drew builds. I use them in the Ramsey Hall library as well. They just work so nicely for making really big, elegant libraries, which I just think is super fun. Who doesn't love a big, elegant library? It's fantastic. So every time I pause, that's me trying to look at another, kind of like following myself through the walkthrough of the game and trying to figure out what the floor plan looks like and how big each of these rooms need to be. Getting down to the saloon was interesting because you can't have stairs lead directly up to a door in The Sims 4, so I kind of make it like a little alcove almost, like a little hallway room. And that ends up helping us get to the stairs to go down into the saloon area. Part of the fun, too, with these recreations is imagining rooms that we don't get to see in the games. For example, there has to be a kitchen somewhere, even though we never see a kitchen. And there have to be bathrooms in places, even though we never see bathrooms. So what I imagined, I'm working on the basement right now to kind of figure out where the saloon area will be. But the room directly next to it, you notice that there's a door there. That ends up being a butler's pantry, which was a super common thing to have back in the day. Rather than having like a kitchen right off the dining room, you would often have a butler's pantry so that the servants could keep the food in that area and then serve it as needed, but then you wouldn't see like the kitchen staff or anything bringing the food up. It was more like a secret area. So I take the butler's pantry and I end up making it like, it looks like a butler's pantry, but I also make it a laundry because I figured that they would need a full service laundry room. If you're running a bed and breakfast, you're gonna need to be washing sheets and towels all the time, so that would be important. And now we're coming down here to figure out the scale of the saloon. This was another space that just came together so naturally. I don't know if it's just because I've played in it so many times that it's like I could walk into this room and know exactly where I am, even if I was there in real life. I know the dimensions. I know what's supposed to be down here. Lots of tables, and I really like the way these tables looked too, these tables and chairs. They ended up being very similar to the ones that are actually in the game. And I expanded, again, the saloon to imagine that it's now a finished space, it's now a functional space that they use, so I added more tables, more chairs, and kind of expanded the bar space a little bit. Pausing here to try and figure out what I wanted to do with the spacing of the fireplace, because there is a little bit of a like secret space in the saloon, and it was tricky trying to figure out like, should I do that? Should I not do that? For some of the secret areas, I don't necessarily like add them in. The only way you can have a secret area in The Sims 4 is by using a bookcase that has like a secret mechanism on it, a lock kind of thing, and it's a very modern looking bookcase, so it would not work at all for the style of this particular build. To have a modern looking bookcase in a Victorian style house would just be kind of funny, and it would be very out of place, and it would be very obvious that it's a secret door. We also don't have like things like trapdoors or holes that Nancy can like go climb down to find secret areas. So the space itself is there, but they aren't accessible just because that's not something that's possible. Sims 4 is a very powerful game. You can do quite a lot of things, but you cannot very readily make secret rooms. So, yeah. Now we're moving on to adding what will end up being the dining room space. There is a lot of floor plan stuff that you guys are going to see in this, which maybe isn't the most exciting thing, but I do think it's kind of interesting to see it come together, especially because in the games we only see one room at a time. So kind of seeing it all together in one cohesive space, I think is kind of interesting, and seeing how they all flow together and how big this building actually is. You guys will have to let me know in the comments down below. Do you feel like the Golden Gardenia feels like a giant bed and breakfast? Like, does it feel like a massive space to you? Because it just really never has for me. So it was kind of fun making it this big, giant, massive Victorian mansion. I can't even imagine how much Rose and Abby had to pay to get this. I know in the game that Rose says that she like spent her life savings, and even that wasn't enough, so that's why Abby invested in on this with her, but it's just so big. And even then, I think I only end up fitting, how many bedrooms do I fit in? I think I fit in 1, 2, 3, 4, I think I'd fit in 5 bedrooms, but one of the bedrooms is supposed to be like an owner's suite. So technically like 4 bedrooms that people could actually stay in, which is interesting because the way this looks, I feel like it looks like it would be much bigger than a 4-bedroom house, but it's the living space really that takes up so much of the square footage, and the fact that the main entryway is open and is like a 2-story kind of thing, so you can't put anything up on the second level there. So I guess that makes sense. Now I'm working on kind of trying to maintain a mirror image of the other side of the manor itself. So on one side, we have the living room area that we do get to explore in the game, but if you look at the exterior screenshots, there is a whole other right side of the building. There are doors that we see, but we never get to go over to that mysterious right side of the building. And I figured that that would be an area that Rose and Abby would kind of transform into the check-in area and kind of like a common area space for the business side of things. In the game, Rose is conducting all of her business from the dining room, and she just has papers strewn all over the dining room table, and that's kind of just where she's working. But realistically, once the place would actually open up and they'd have guests, Rose wouldn't be able to do her business in the dining room. That would be a little bit strange because people would be eating in there because it's a bed and breakfast and you typically have your breakfast there. So I figured that they would need a separate office space, and I figured it also made sense too to have a little bit of a guest suite. I don't think that after this place is renovated, they would necessarily stay on the premises all the time. I've been to I think 2 separate bed and breakfasts in my life, and the owners don't live where the bed and breakfast is, or at least they don't in the 2 that I've been to. They might live nearby, or they might have another house on the property where they live, but I think it would be super tough to kind of separate your work life and your home life if you live in a place where you're constantly inviting guests into your house, and that's like your living. I think that would be really tricky. So the idea is that the guest suite is there if they need it, but they might not use it all the time. And maybe if they're super busy, they could rent it out to other people. Who knows? So now we're starting to work on the second level floor plan a little bit. So this is basically where all of the bedrooms are. I also wanted to make sure that all of the bedrooms that could be rented out had a ensuite. So every bedroom itself has its own separate bathroom. That's something that I've experienced in bed and breakfast that I've stayed at, and it's really nice. I can't really imagine like going to a hotel type experience and having to share bathrooms with strangers. I didn't like it in college, and that's when I like knew most of the people that I had to share with, so why would I want to do it with strangers kind of thing. I know some places end up having to do that and have a shared bathroom space just because of the floor plan of the original house itself, but Since it was in my control, I wanted to make sure that the guests that came here had a wonderful experience. So every bedroom does manage to have its own ensuite. Again, that was just something that I felt would be important to Rose and Abby. I love doing bed and breakfast type spaces because I've always thought that it would be so fun to have a bed and breakfast. Like, I would just love that. I think the idea is so appealing. I'm sure it's a very difficult thing to do, and it's probably like a really stressful kind of job. But at the same time, just having a beautiful space and inviting people into it and being able to like craft a menu or set up activities and provide a space where people can just escape and relax. I just love that idea. It's like the idea of owning a spa. It's a place where people go to be happy and relaxed and to escape from their daily lives. How wonderful would that be to be able to provide that to people? I love that kind of thing. So, had a lot of fun trying to imagine what would be in the bedrooms themselves, what would be in the bathrooms, and really kind of making them really welcoming spaces. That was definitely my goal in this. We're now working on the floor plan, or I just finished the floor plan for Nancy's bedroom, the bedroom that she stays in for the entire game. And I believe in the game they say that Nancy's bedroom is kind of the only one that's fully finished because all of the furniture in there was already with the room, like it was already included, which is kind of funny. And then Abby's room is also completed as well. I changed Abby's room into being more of a guest space. So rather than it being Abby's room, I imagine that she was just staying in that room for the duration of the renovation so that it was easy for them while they were fixing things. But only having 3 rooms to rent out is pretty limiting. I figured Abby's room would be turned into a guest suite and she probably, again, would live off the premises or nearby kind of thing. So now I'm working on making sure that I'm going to be able to fit everything in for Nancy's room. I kind of mirrored the bottom style of shape, I guess the bottom shape of the house on the upper level to try and create what Nancy's room space would end up looking like. It was kind of nice because the wraparound porch that we have on the bottom level, which is again a very classic Victorian kind of thing, I think gives me extra space on the top to work with the floor plan to make sure that the size of everything worked out okay. Nancy's door is in a different spot, and that's really kind of the biggest thing for the floor plan that was different, is that her door is in a different place, and because I add en-suites to things, there are extra doors that end up being added. So you might notice a couple doors here and there that are in different places or in the wrong place, quote unquote, but it's more just that's what I had to do to make it a functional bed and breakfast rather than just a mystery game space. So now I'm doing the same thing with Abby's room here, just kind of trying to figure out the scale and how big it should be and what needed to be included in there. Abby actually has quite a few things. She has like a desk, she has 2 dressers, she has a trunk, there's a bookcase in there, and I do end up basically fitting all of that furniture in there. One thing though, Abby's furniture is basically all different colors. Like her nightstand is a different color than the desk, which is a different color than the trunk, which is a different color than the bookcase, which is a different color from the dresser. And in The Sims, that just does not look fantastic, especially when you have the ability to use matching swatches. So that's part of the reason too that I imagined that Abby would take some of her furniture out of there, and a lot more of it would have been furniture that they would put in specifically to make the room look more aesthetically pleasing for guests. I also tried to maintain a little bit of a theme for each room, kind of like in color and in decoration style. So like in the game, Abby's room is like the moon room, so it's kind of a mystical looking space. And Nancy's room is the Chinese room. It's furnished with more traditional kind of Chinese furnishing style. So I tried to maintain that in all of the other bedrooms that I did as well. I'm adding in the en-suites here to make sure that each space has a bathroom, which is great. Bathrooms are important. As far as finishing the outside of this build, I did cut out the roofing and the placement of all of the columns that I did on the outside because that took a very long time and it was super repetitive. So like seeing the floor plan come together is maybe a little bit more interesting because then you can start to imagine what the space is going to end up looking like. But watching me try to figure out roofing and columns for literally like an hour probably not as exciting. The entire build is covered with columns. Again, a very Victorian kind of thing. There's columns everywhere. And the roofing, because it is such a big build and because it's such a unique shape, took a lot of finagling. So at some point here, we'll switch on over to doing furnishing on the inside, and a lot of the roofing stuff you won't see, but you will see it in the screenshots, and I'm going to include the landscaping, which you'll actually see in part 3. Okay, yep, here is where we switched over now to working on the interiors. You'll get sneak peeks of the outside here and there, and again, I'll include lots of screenshots so you'll be able to see what it looks like on the inside, on the outside as well. So now on to the more detailed work. This is the bedroom that Nancy stays in at the Golden Gardenia. They call it the Chinese bedroom. And most of the furniture that was in this room was supposedly just kind of left there when they purchased the house. So it's original to the space. I did try to maintain some of the more Asian-inspired decoration choices, but I also tried to maintain more the color than anything else. So this room was giving me like very red and orange and warm kind of colors and experiences, so I wanted to make sure that came through in the rugs and the couches and all the fabrics, the wood choices and everything. I wanted it to all flow together while still kind of looking like what we have in the game itself. Figuring out the curtain situation throughout this entire build, too, was kind of a struggle because the curtains that they have in the game have very old-fashioned curtains, and then on the inside they have kind of like this sheer layering on the inside. So that's what I'm doing with these curtains here. I use the sheer curtains that we got from the Island Living Stuff pack, and then I'm using these old-timey kind of more frilly curtains that we got with cats and dogs, and I layer them a little bit. If you don't like how it looks, you can very easily change it, but that's the closest I could get to what the curtains in the game actually look like. So this room, if you were to stay in this room, has a vanity, so it has its own little vanity space, which is kind of fun. I am just adding decorations and again trying to find more of the Asian-inspired decorative items that we have in the game and kind of utilizing them as much as I can. This game also has a lot of vases, or vases if we want to be fancy. So I used more of those decorative items than I typically do. Like, I don't use vases a whole lot, but I definitely should use them more because they're just a really nice decorative piece. It's kind of funny too, because a lot of the decorative items that I use in this room are inspired by different Asian cultures. So like this is the quote-unquote Chinese room, but I would argue that it has, based on the limitations of the things that I have in The Sims, inspiration from multiple different cultures from Asia. So apologies for it not being a purely Chinese room, but I did what I can with the limitations that I have. I had fun putting the luggage on there too, because that's where Nancy keeps her luggage in the game, so it just kind of looks like there's suitcases there. So you can imagine that maybe somebody is renting out this room right now as we speak, and I wanted to make sure to include the beautiful tapestries on the walls because those play a huge part in the solving of this mystery. The tapestry, there's one with a beautiful poem on it, and then there's one that's kind of hiding a secret compartment. So those are super important. Wanted to make sure that those were included in there. And again, more than anything, I'm working on the colors and trying to maintain those as much as I could. Lots of very warm, very rich kind of colors. I end up using mostly things from the Realm of Magic game pack, the Vampires game pack. I use the windows are strictly from Strangerville. All of them are from Strangerville, which is a game pack that I still have not done the story for it. I've watched people do the story for it, and it's kind of funny because they code it as a mystery, like it's supposed to be this mystery that you solve in The Sims. But I think any of us that play Nancy Drew games look at it and are like, wow, mysterious. I literally know what's happening right away. Not to toot our own horns or anything, but like for those of us who are actually interested in mystery games, it's not really a mystery. It's more just kind of a linear gameplay kind of thing added into The Sims, which is not typically what I enjoy in The Sims. which is why I haven't played it. However, the doors and windows that came with Strangerville, I use all the time, especially in these recreations. I've used them so much. I used them in Maddie's apartment. I'm pretty sure I used them in Ramsey Hall. I definitely used them here. They were the only windows and doors that I used, because they just have the beautiful Victorian style. They have stunning stained glass. They're just fantastic. I love those doors and windows. It's almost worth having that pack strictly for the doors and windows if you know that you are going to be building old houses a lot, which, because I'm doing this series, I am building old houses quite a bit. It's definitely something that's ending up happening quite a lot. So we're getting close to being done with the bedroom here. I'm just kind of starting to add in things to fill the space a little bit. So some things are included in the game and some things I just kind of add in because it was looking empty. And I don't like empty looking rooms. I want things to feel nice and full. So just adding in as many decorative things as I could find, like that pig statue, for example. They added a bunch of free content for Chinese New Year at one point in the game. So it was kind of fun to include as many of those elements as I could, to really get the theme going. And it looks like now we're moving on to the bathroom. All of the bathrooms end up being the same, just with kind of different colors. So what I do is I take the wallpaper from whatever room the bathroom is attached to. They all use the same tile, and then I just kind of try and maintain the color scheme using a lot of the more old school type counters and plumbing items. So we have this lovely clawfoot tub with the sheer curtain that comes around, or I guess it's not the sheer one. The sheer one came with vampires and I just used the regular base game one. But that's so Victorian to me. It just seems like absolutely a bed and breakfast type thing. So many bed and breakfasts have those like fancy clawfoot tub kind of things. So I definitely wanted to make sure I included that. It was kind of fun doing the bathrooms too, because I had to think about, okay, what do you need in a bathroom if you're staying at a space? You probably need towels. So I got you your towels. I got you some hand towels. We have some nice decorations in here. And in some of the other rooms too, I put out a drink tray, or I put out like a set of lotions or like little shampoos or something, just so each room has a little bit of those little amenities that just make it feel a little bit more cozy. I tried to match the metal tones as much as I could, but they really don't match all that well at all. And then trying to choose artwork that is a little bit more bright, a little bit more exciting, to really match the boldness of this space, because this is a red bathroom and it's bold, but I think it ends up working out kind of well together. I think everything kind of blends in nicely. I think almost all of the rooms, hopefully all of the rooms, have a robe too, because I love the idea of like going to a fancy bed and breakfast and they have a robe for you that you can put on. So yeah, that's the Chinese bedroom. At the end of this, you guys will have to let me know after you've seen all the bedrooms which one you would stay in. Would you stay in the one that Nancy stayed in? Because it's pretty cool that Nancy stayed in it. I ended up having to remove some of the outside, I don't even know what it's called, outside like trim, which was really disappointing because it looks fantastic from the outside, but sometimes just the way the rooms are designed, it ends up clipping onto the inside of the hallways and stuff, and it looks really bad. So I removed some of the trim. It still ends up looking okay, and I'm able to maintain most of it, but I did have to get rid of some of it. And now we come to my classic dilemma in Nancy Drew builds, which is decorating the hallways with as much different art as possible. Most of the games have these like beautiful portraits and stunning artwork, and we're just so limited with what we have with that in The Sims 4. So I use as many different art items as I possibly can. Lots of base game ones, lots of cats and dogs. It's kind of ending up being a theme. But this hallway in Message in a Haunted Mansion in the game has a lot of construction going on, but in this rendition, everything is brand new. The floors have been polished, the artwork is all up, the lights are all good. It's just a nice, bright hallway that hopefully doesn't have any spooky ghosts wandering around it. But in this build, you never know. Golden Gardenia, kind of a creepy place. I also wanted to make sure I included the dumbwaiter too. So there's that white square like decoration that I put on the wall there, so you can pretend that that's the dumbwaiter, because the dumbwaiter is important in the mystery. I wanted to make sure that I included it. Same with the mirror that's in this hallway. It's important to the mystery. It plays a role, so I wanted to make sure I included that. It's a lot of fun. This hallway is definitely smaller than it is in the game too, but it ends up working out with the functionality that we need as far as the floor plan. And again, lots of vases. Vases everywhere. We love a good vase. I think I need more vases in my life. After doing this build, it just makes me want to go get like a beautiful hand-spun terracotta vase kind of thing. Yeah, that's my idea. So we're going to be coming up on the screenshots here again soon. Again, this is a 3-part build, so there will be 2 more parts after this one posting this week, so you'll get to see the entirety of the Golden Gardenia by the end of the week. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. That kind of engagement really helps us find new detectives for the channel, new fellow detectives that can join us on our lovely Nancy Drew and Sims adventures. Again, I hope that you really liked this video. I had a lot of fun working on this build, and I'm so excited that I finally get to share this one with you guys. Please feel free to leave me a comment letting me know what you think. And if you aren't subscribed, feel free to do so and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims content. I hope you enjoyed the other parts of this video, and I hope you enjoyed the screenshots of the exterior of the build itself, as well as the hallways or the upstairs hallway and Nancy's bedroom. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.